There we go. That works. Okay. So yeah, so we're going to talk about how to define our value to buyers today, basically. So are there specific things that you guys want to learn about today? I'm happy, throw them at me and we'll see what we can do.
Somebody says they want to buy it, but they're stuck in their house for the rate.
Yeah. So yeah, the buyers that need to sell first, but can't really feel like they can sell because they're at a 2% interest rate on the house they have now. And so I've had some in the last year where literally to downsize and go to a smaller house, their payment would double. And so that's like counterintuitive, like it doesn't make sense, right, for them. So that's a hard one. And it has to be a real need, I think, in that situation, like a real need to sell, a real need to buy. But if you're mostly like affordability, like interest rates being affordable, like right now, what are we? Probably 7-ish interest rate, high 6s. You can still do some things to get a better interest rate, can still do some things to get, but it's hard when they have a house to sell because that really kind of makes them feel stuck. And that's a whole nother discussion about selling a house. But yeah, making them, are they really a buyer? Dean will always say they're not a buyer until they are, which means they have to have sold their house first. They can't buy until they sell, unless they can. Some people can. Like I've had clients before, they're like, oh, I have a house to sell, but I don't need to sell it to buy. Great, let's do this, So kind of being able to determine, are they ready? Are they able? So that's a good question. Hopefully we'll get to a little bit more of that. Any other things we want to talk about specifically today? I'm sorry, it's a small group and I'm going to be like looking at both of you for like feedback or questions, but feel free to just jump in anytime. So, okay. So this is where we're at. So you've kind of already gone through like how to get the leads. And now we're actually talking about how to take that lead to the next step. So winning the buyer. So you get through the lead generation to lead follow-up. Now we're actually kind of working on the transaction. So here we go. So figuring out who the A buyers are, A meaning the best, ready. It's like labeling your buyers A, B, C, whatever. A buyers are ready. Getting the appointment with them, preparing for that appointment, then having the appointment, like buyer consultation, and then getting your signed buyer rep before you can go show houses. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And Gary Keller says the right approach to close for a meeting is the only approach. You have to ask for it. So that's pretty clear. People aren't going to ask you generally, hey, can I come meet with you? Like you have to like put that out there and make it together. Like I actually had past clients of mine reach out to me last week and they were like, we're thinking about selling our current house and buying another house, but we don't know. Like, we don't know if this is the time to do it. And I kind of was texting back and forth with her. And finally I said, why don't I just come see you guys and talk more about it in person and in detail, and I can show you what I'm finding in the market. And she's like, oh, you would do that? And I'm like, of course, that's what I want to do. I want to get in front of you. I want to make sure that hi, how are you? Tell me your name. Kira, I'm Amber. But she didn't even think to suggest, oh, let's make an appointment. You have to take control of the conversation and like, hey, let's make an appointment. Let's make this happen. So that's the way to get it. So what do you guys think are our A buyers? You guys have seen this graphic a lot. Sorry if I'm like standing in the way. Like I know the camera's over there, so I'll try not to. What's your A buyer scenario? Or what did you do to get to that point, I guess? You talked to someone, hopefully. You've talked to someone. But there's someone who's ready. And I think, like the book says 10 to 14 days, but I think someone who's ready and willing to buy in the next 30-ish days is an A buyer. Like, yeah, that's a pretty solid buyer. They need to buy a house in the next 30 days. it's pretty solid. Even 45, like if they got a lease terminating, something like that, that got to get out of, that's a pretty good buyer. So how are you guys going to follow up with this A buyer? Set the appointment, yep, and then follow up with them. Like, I think sometimes, even if, like, let's say we set an appointment for next week, follow up again, like, hey, just checking, are we still good for that next week? Is there anything I can get you in the meantime? What questions do you have that I can be prepared for? That kind of thing. So you know what they're needing, so you can walk in with the information that they need. That makes sense? But sometimes buyers are like, well, I kind of am ready. I'm not sure, those buyers that are like, they could, but they're not sure. I had literally had this happen in December. Had a client, a friend of mine's brother-in-law call me one morning, and I talked to him. He said, I need to buy. It's a place for my son to live down at BYU. I don't need it right now. It could be anytime between now and a year from now. But if I find the right deal, and I'm always like, oh, this is going to be tricky because the guy he's an investor and he knows what he's doing and he's like looking for the deal. Those are hard clients sometimes because they want the best deal and they know what a deal looks like, right? So I talked to him, I think, on Monday morning. By Wednesday, I had sent him some properties to look over an email. And he called me, he said, I like these two out of the ones you sent me. Okay, and I was like, all right. And I've got more information for him on those two. He's like, all right, let's make an offer on this one. Cash closing next week. I'm like, okay. Like he could have been a year from now, or he could have been right now. Like it's just hard to know sometimes how serious people are. And we literally closed before the end of the year. But from the time I met him to the time we closed was like 11 days. So that can happen, or it could also go the other way where it was like, I'm working trying to find the deal for this guy for a year and like struggling and struggling and struggling to find it. And, constantly doing research on tons of different properties. I've had that happen too. And then they don't even buy anything because they're like, never mind, we changed our mind. So you just have to be aware. Sometimes it's hard to gauge where people are at. Okay, so this is where we're at in the buyer service cycle. So you've got, we're kind of going to the appointment stage, and then you're going to prepare for the buyer consultation. We'll do the buyer consultation. So we're kind of 1, 2, 3 right here on this cycle. And then we'll get to the next phases in future classes. That's the nice thing about Ignite, is it kind of breaks it down into certain classes so that you can work on that. So today, particularly, we're working on like kind of preparing for that buyer consultation. Okay, and then doing that. All right, let's roll. Questions or aha? That's pretty early on for ahas, but questions you guys have so far? Getting started. All right, we'll kind of cruise through. I told Austin I didn't put my watch on this morning, so I'm like, I'm going to keep looking at my phone because I don't know what time it is and I don't want to keep you guys too long. All right, so here's where we're at. Getting to the appointment and converting your A buyers. So obviously there's a term that you will hear a lot in real estate. It's called speed to lead. If you have someone that's asking about something, you need to get back to them pretty quickly. I literally had this happen this summer where my friend said, hey, I have friends that need to sell a house. Can you reach out to them? I said, yes. However, father just died and we have a funeral and we have da 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 da. And she said, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm sure they'll be okay to wait 2 days. And literally by the 2 days, they had already talked to another agent and already like gone through the process. I was like, So some people just can't wait, no matter what. So he was old, so don't worry. But yeah, the sooner you can get to people and at least explain like your timing and everything, you want their complete information so you can get it into command, create an opportunity, and then what is their motivation to buy? You need able to speak to their motivation. Like you were talking about your friends, they're, have a hard time talking about selling because the next house, the interest rate is going to be a lot higher. What's their real motivation? What's their core reason for wanting to buy a home? Most people, it's more about emotional than tangible. Buying a home is more like it's my home than it's about like having a place that dollars and cents make sense for. Because yeah. So then you're obviously going to set an appointment as soon as possible. So the sooner you can, the sooner it works out. Okay. So a lot of people will be hesitant. The market has changed this last summer to where now it actually makes it easier for you guys to get to an appointment, because it used to be buyers would just be like, no, I just want to go see this house. Can't you just take me to see this one house? Well, now we can't without something signed. We have to have something signed. So, but we want to do more than that. We want to be able to show them the benefits of working with us. We want to be able to show them that we're going to be able to save them time and money and help them through the process. We're not just a door opener. Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
2 acres of commercial land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Under two, well, I found 5 acres for 100K.
Wow. That's impressive that you found. Right. Yeah.
And this happens to be close.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's like, to look at it as coordinates. It's
Yeah.
not like an address.
Right.
So even for that, do I need a buyer agreement to drive it out?
Yeah, I would have a buyer agreement just to protect yourself. Because if you're going to do the work and put in the time, you want to make sure you're going to get paid, and technically I would think, I mean, that's a gray area, but I would think that that's considered showing, if you're driving past a vacant piece of land, you're showing him, so yeah, I would say yes. But, okay. So showing them the benefits. Why would spending 30 minutes with me talking about what your needs are help save you time? So many clients of mine that just once I understand what they're looking for, it helps me hone in on what they really need. And then, yeah, I can save them a lot of hassle of wasting time and energy looking at things that I know are not going to work for them. The take back close, this is one, I don't really love it, but it's like, hey, I don't know if you'd be, if it would help or not, but could we meet together, if I could help you. It's just kind of, I don't know, kind of cheesy to me. But the negative positive close is like, would you be offended if we could meet to go over all this? Why would anyone be offended? I don't know. Some of these, make them your own, speak real like a human, don't speak like a robot. People know when you're being real and genuine and when you want to help them. That's the way I feel like. I feel like my job is to help people. And when people know that's what I want to do, they're totally open. But give them what they're looking for. Specifically, if they call about a certain property, you can say, yeah, I can give you all the information about that. And other similar properties for sale, because chances are the one they call on is unlikely to be the one they buy. You never know. But trial close, then a lot of people have already set up like the hot sheets with the MLS to be able to get listings. So they don't really feel like that's a service. That's something anyone can do. They can do on their own. So how do we make it above and beyond? How do we get something that they really want? So they're like, can you see how receiving a list of all the new homes on the market? The one thing that they may not be getting is the way our MLS is set up. Like we can set it up as agents. I don't know if they can as consumers to alert them immediately once the listing hits the market. I don't know if the consumer site allows them to do that. And then the assumptive close sounds like we should meet. I'm available, blah, blah, blah time. What does that work for you? Assuming that that's going to be a good time. And then tie downs. wouldn't that be great? If can't you see how that would be great? Those kind of things. Again, make them your own, make them not robotic sounding, and make them, again, showing the benefit to the buyer. Questions on these? These are just some sales tactics. Not really a big sales tactic girl. Sorry. And I'm like struggling here, you guys. Last week I was sick, so I'm trying to still talk and not. Okay. Okay, so buyer objections to the appointment. When a buyer objects to meeting with you, what's your first thought? What's that? They're not serious, could be. Sometimes you just feel like, oh, they don't want to meet with me. Like I'm being rejected here. Or you might think they're being unreasonable, that they don't understand the process. And a lot of times it is that they don't understand the process. Real estate's kind of been a foreign thing for a lot of people. I used to, like even years ago, like, hey, come into the office, let me explain how I work. Because people didn't understand that I didn't get a paycheck every Friday. You know, they didn't understand that I had to work for them, had to sell them a house in order to get paid. I've had many clients who were older and I thought experienced enough in the world of real estate that they would understand that, but I'm surprised how many people just don't. So, but when we feel like we're being rejected, that's our limiting belief. So objections are actually good. They're actually teaching us what they want. They're giving us signals of what they need, what they don't know enough about. So don't let that be a distraction to you. So don't walk away at the first sign of that. Ask them questions. Tell me more about that. I love that because it's very open and it gives them the opportunity. Like if they say, oh, I don't want to meet because we're too busy. Tell me more about that. You know, oh, well, we've got going on, but we really need to buy a house. So they're going to kind of explain what their process is, and they may explain themselves out of it. They may explain that they're not that ready, you know, that they're going to be like 6 to 12 months down the road or whatever. But still, you want to work with them and figure out how to get them on that path. A couple of weeks ago, I met with the first-time buyer couple, and they're not ready yet, but we sat down and said, okay, here's what the path looks like. Your lease is up in June. This is what you need to do between now and June. Like they're not ready to buy tomorrow, but they're ready to buy in June. So yeah, let's help them figure out what they need to do to get there. And I'll keep in touch with them and make sure that when they buy in June, it's with me. So obviously you want to empathize with people. The hardest thing about real estate is it's just relationships, and it's just helping people understand that you're on their side. That's why you can say, you know, I understand how you feel, like, but again, don't be robotic about it. Just like really empathize with people and try and figure out the real issue. There's another phrase in real estate that used to be said a lot: buyers are liars. Buyers sometimes don't understand what they want or how, you know, they just don't know. I'll often ask people like, is there certain square footage that you need? Or is there certain lot size that you need? They don't know. Prime example, I think I used this the last time I taught, my sister-in-law and her husband, they moved from here to Pennsylvania, and they were on like an acre and a half in Pennsylvania. That's just common. So when they moved back here to Utah, they said, we have to have a minimum. We want half an acre or more, but we have to have a minimum of a quarter acre. We looked at, I'm not joking, I counted over 100 houses. And we looked, their price range was very broad too. It was like from here to here, and like, well, we like this house, but not that much. So we made like 4 offers that were lowball offers because the houses weren't great. They weren't exactly what they wanted. And finally, this dates the whole transaction and me as well. But finally, she called me up one day and she said, we saw this house in the paper, and why haven't we seen it? And I'm like, let me find out. So I got on the MLS, I pulled up that house, and the search criteria that we had was 0.25 or larger for the lot size. This house was 0.24. and they still live in that house today. So you just don't know, and you want to be a little flexible when people are like, so now I just tell people, if you tell me 0.25, I'm going to put 0.20 unless you're like, hard and fast. But with price, I'm always super careful because I hate watching those TV shows where they're like, my budget is 600,000 and then they show them $1 million house. Like, I'm like, what? Like, so I always tell them, like, if you tell me your budget is 600,000, I'm going to put 600,000 unless you tell me you want to look up to 650 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's it, depending on the market that we're in too. Like, you might not be able to negotiate down in a hot market for listings. So just a couple of examples. So empathize with them, find out what the real issue is, offer them a solution. So what are some possible solutions that you could offer to people? Something like maybe they, work crazy hours. Maybe you could meet with them on a Saturday, or you know what I mean? Something like that that meets their schedule. A lot of people, I'm still surprised. Most people expect realtors to work 24/7, but every once in a while I'll come across a client who's like, oh, but I work till 5 every day. And I'm like, I can come in the evening. Like, that's not a big deal for me at all. And they're like, oh, really? You would do that? Like, so we have to throw that out there as a solution. And then again, ask for the appointment, ask for that agreement to get into the office. So we always want to seek first to understand, and then trust starts with honesty and like them being honest with us and you being honest with them. So commitment and communication. So questions, ahas, like I said, we're just going to cruise through and keep going. So, all right. Yeah.
So if last minute, buyer.
Mhm.
That wants.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's a great question. Like for the productivity team, that's a,
Can I do it?
you could do it yourself in that if you needed to. That's my advice. I don't know what the office official policy is on that, so I don't know. But yeah, you can do it. It's just on the MLS. So you need to have something signed. You need, if they're not available, you need to get it signed. So yeah. I mean, you could, but that doesn't look very professional. As long as it's in writing, it doesn't really matter what it is or what it says. But the MLS has a nice, 3-4 page agreement that makes it very clear. You want to be careful about. Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
And so what Shoni was showing was just a little, I promise.
Oh. Oh, yeah, that's true. No, we definitely want to look professional, and sometimes like I found it where in my experience, doing this for so long, sometimes I'll have a friend that will call me and say, "Oh, I just want to see this one house," and I'm more casual because it's a friend, and so in the past I wouldn't get something signed, and I'd show them 16 houses just casually, and then I find out that they bought a house, and I'm like, "Oh, why didn't I understand enough to explain to them?" Like, this is how I work. This is how I get paid. Yes, we're friends, but please don't, take advantage of me kind of thing. Because we want to still be friends after this is over, right? Great question though. I don't know how the office handles that, like through the productivity coaching team. So that might be a question for them. So, okay. All right, so we're gonna prepare for the buyer consultation. And confirm the date and time, confirm where we're going to meet, make sure that all the decision makers are present. You want to be sure, like sometimes I had it happen one time where a couple called me. The husband called me and said, I want to sell our house. I want to move to like Salem down south. They were in American Fork. And it wasn't until I got there, I asked him if his wife was going to be there, and he said yes. It wasn't until I got there that I got a really cold feeling from her. And I was like, whoa, what did I do? Like I walked in the door and she was like, just really cold. And then we sat down at the kitchen table and I started like asking them questions and explaining things. And she said, I don't want to sell. And I was like, oh, well, that explains a lot. Like it was something really traumatic. Like they had had a son pass away that had lived in that home and she did not want to leave that home. And he was ready to move on. And it was just like, hey, I'm not here to pressure you guys. I'm here to help you when you're ready. Like, honestly, like that's something you two need to work out between the two of you. Here's the facts, here's the information that you asked for, but that is not my job. That, you know, I would never want to push somebody into something that they're not ready to do. So if she hadn't have been there and I would have just talked to him, I could have been really down this road thinking they're ready to go. And she's nowhere close, like nowhere close. So having them both there helps you and them because they're able to ask you the question. What I tell people is, if you're both there, then I can answer all your questions at once rather than having to go back and forth, you know, because they're going to ask you, well, did she say this? And, you know, that's just easier to have everybody there. You're going to put together your buyer guide and then make sure the meeting space is ready and the lead sheet. That's just kind of some stuff to work on. So top 10 service areas, these are what the buyers need us to do. They need us to know what they need, their needs analysis. So you're going to do an analysis of what they're looking for. You're going to help them. You're not going to do the pre-approval or pre-qualification, but you're going to help them find someone, pre-approval lender, guide them in the right direction. I usually like to give 2 names at least so that they can just compare. Sorry. They want us for neighborhood information, things like HOA, that kind of thing. I once had a buyer buying it was a condo, it was a twin home down here in Provo. And I noticed that it was like, it had literally just been bought, had just been purchased like a month before they listed it. So I asked the listing agent, why are they selling so quickly? And he said, it's actually a parent that bought this twin home for their kids to live in, found out after they moved in that the HOA does not allow smoking anywhere on the property, not in your unit, not out of your unit, not outside, not in the park, nowhere. You cannot smoke on the property at the HOA, and their daughter smokes. So they literally were selling the house they just bought. Like, okay, that would have been nice to know before you bought. You know, check those HOA docs. What's important? So I usually, when I get HOA docs, I ask my clients, is there something important to you that we should be looking for in these HOA docs? Because I'm not going to study them. I'm not going to go through 300 pages of CC&Rs of a neighborhood. But if you tell me it's important to you to know that in the future you could rent this place, I'll look over that section. If it's important to you to know if pets are allowed and what size of pets, I'll help you find that information and I'll tell you, hey, it's on page 38, whatever. So you can see it and you can make sure it's what you want. Obviously the home search, helping them find the right home, helping them make an offer, helping them negotiate, coordinating with title and lenders and all the people that need to be coordinated with, preparing everything pre-closing, and then closing and post-closing. Questions on this? We're kind of cruising right through. Okay. All right, buyer guide. So this is what you want to have in your buyer guide. And this is going to help you, again, look professional. All of this is available if you look in command. What's it under? Designs has a really nice buyer guide that you can use, customize it with your own name, your own photo. You can pick and choose pages that you like. You don't have to use it all. And then you can print out a nice hard copy to leave with people. So these are some ideas. So you want a welcome letter, kind of a breakdown of the timelines of the buying process, how it works. the most important phrase, Gary Keller says this, the most important phrase in real estate is here's what comes next. Buyers are so nervous and they're so anxious about putting all this money into a transaction and not knowing what comes next. So we're here to guide them through that process. Home search, how to access the KW app. So all of this you want to give them right up front. What is your value proposition? How are you going to help them? Why should they buy a home? What's going on in the current market? What should they expect? When the market was crazy hot and houses were all selling for over asking and multiple offers, and somebody came to me and said, I want to make a lowball offer. Well, here's what the market's doing. So we could do that, but they're expecting us to give them that information. And with my clients, anytime before we make an offer, I do a market analysis on that home specifically so that we know we're not overpaying. So financial worksheet, I don't go too much into their finances. That's really the lender information for the credit check and things like that. Interest rate chart, like that could be interesting to show people like, hey, if you wait and rates go up another 1%, you're going to be paying X number more dollars, for this home, same home. The nice thing to give them is what's required for a loan application. Mistakes to avoid is a big one. I have a thing in there like things not to do while you're trying to buy a home. And it's mostly like, don't go open new credit cards, don't close credit cards, don't go buy a car, don't go quit your job. I think I told it in the last class, but I had a client one time, this was when I was very, very new in real estate. We got to the closing table and we sat down and we're going over everything, and the lender was actually there, which is kind of rare. The lender was there and they were going through the paperwork and they said, I want to make sure you need to sign here that nothing has changed in your financial situation. And the wife goes, so I just quit my job. Is that a problem? Yes, that is a problem. It was a major problem. They will call it literally up until it's funded and recorded. So you could have it happen where it's a Friday and it's not going to fund and record till Monday. They might call the employer on Monday and say, are they still employed here? Before they fund the loan. Because do not quit your job. Don't go buying all the stuff at RC Willey and putting it on credit. Like, don't do that. Those are big, big things. And people don't understand it. I had a lender, I was at a closing, and a lender was telling me this story that she showed up to do a refinance, and the buyers or the owners, this was a couple years ago, both showed up in brand new cars. And she's like, that doesn't fit the budget. I know, because I've seen all their numbers, and they couldn't do the refinance that they were planning to close on right then. She's like, I'm like, well, that's kind of a big one. You should have told them. Like, they both bought brand new cars. So, but they were planning on having a lower house payment, but no. Buyer questionnaire, I suggest you make something so that it's very consistent with your buyers, like the kind of service that you give. I have a 2-page, like front and back questionnaire of like, okay, do you need to sell a house before you, like that way it's very consistent. I ask all my buyers the same questions. Are you paying cash? Are you, so it doesn't look like I'm playing favorites or, giving somebody. Fair housing can be a big, big deal. And so you just want to make sure you're kind of asking the same questions all the time to your clients. So, go ahead. Oh, yeah. No, I bring it and I will leave it with them like a hard copy. But some people like to do as a PowerPoint, but I just like to leave them a hard copy. Just so they have something after I've gone that they can look at. Okay, so this is in Command. Like I said, it's totally customizable. You can change the fonts, you can change anything on that. It's really nice, but it makes you look good and you don't have to do a ton of work to make it happen. So, table of contents, just make sure if you take any of the pages out that you change that table of contents. We're wanting to talk to people about what they need and what they want. They are overwhelmed. the process of buying a house, it can be completely overwhelming. And so they need to know they have somebody on their side. The phrase I used to use a lot, I still do sometimes, but with people is you would not want to go into a courtroom and rely on the other party's attorney. You would never do that. So why would you walk into an open house and let the listing agent write an offer for you? It's the same thing. They're representing their client. You're not being represented. Your interests are not being looked out for. So just something to think about. But okay, let's see. Then we've got, this is all, like I said, in command and how you can set it up with your clients. So, sorry, looking at the time. Okay, so their wish list, this is kind of just the fun stuff to have in there. But again, even like a fair housing question, like you can't really ask people, are you married? You have phrase it differently. Who's going to be living in this home with you? Because marital status is a fair housing concern. So list how many kids, how many pets. They'll tell you once you ask that, they'll be like, oh, it's me and my girlfriend or me and my dogs and whatever. Who's going to live there? What are some non-negotiables for your home? What are must-have deal killers? If it doesn't have this, it's a complete deal killer. And I wouldn't even give them the option to give you 5. I would say 1 to 3. Like, what are the 1 to 3 things that you have to have, or this is not the house for you, right? And then what are some other needs? What are some other preferences? Do you need a house that's move-in ready, or are you willing to do some work on it? Back when Chip and Joanna Gaines were brand new and everybody wanted to do a fixer-upper, I had clients, they were super cute young couple, first house, and they were like, we want a fixer-upper. And I was like, okay. So I showed them like 10, and every single one, they were like, oh man, that's a lot of work. Oh man, that looks like a lot of work. And so we'd go through these houses, and finally I go, you guys play a game with me, play a little experiment with me. I want to show you this one house. It's in the neighborhood you like. It's not really a fixer-upper, but I think you guys will like it. And it was a move-in ready house and they bought it. They were like fixated on the idea of it, but when it came down to it, they didn't really want to do it. They wanted a house. They wanted to live somewhere. So kind of, you after a few houses and you kind of get some feedback from people, you get a more of an idea. They're lying to me. They don't want a fixer-upper. They want a house to live in. They're lying to themselves, really. So I don't know, when people visit your home, what should it say about you? I don't know how I would even answer that, but are there specific features that you would add to your next house? And then accessibility. Questions on this, kind of whipping through. Neighborhood insights, that's all in command. You can kind of work through that and customize it. This is nice though, because it does kind of show, and that you can't see it on the screen, but you can see it in command, like how it works and how complex of a process it is, because they are overwhelmed, but you want them to know that it's an overwhelming process, but that you have it. You've got them, right? It is a lot to take care of, but you've got it for them. So here's what you need to do, and it breaks it all down. Then home loans, like I said, I don't do a ton with that. But then why do they want to work with you? What is important to them in working with you? Most people work with someone they like, work with a friend, work with someone they know, or someone that they know that, a friend of a friend kind of thing. These numbers, you don't have numbers yet as new agents, but you can use the numbers, make the percentages and stuff like that. So, all right, questions. Sorry, we're cruising along. I think we'll be ready to rock here. All right. So conducting the buyer consultation. You want to be in charge of this. You want to be the one that they're kind of looking to for advice. So someone who knows, a buyer who knows what to expect, they're going to be more confident, they're going to feel more comfortable, and they're going to be more comfortable with you. So, all right, so we've already gotten the buyer, gotten them an appointment. And then you're gonna have that printed out and ready to go. So we've already kind of talked about what kind of a mindset you need to have going into the buyer consultation. What do you guys think you need to be ready for? What's that? Ready for their questions, yes. So be prepared as much as you can. And if you don't have the answers, don't be afraid to say, let me look into that for you. You know, people prefer that to somebody who just makes things up, you know, but be confident. No, they need you. They need your help. They can't do this alone. They need our help, but they also need someone who's caring and someone who has a desire to win, you know, like you want to get this transaction done, you want to find the right property for them. Showing them that is huge. So tell yourself, I am knowledgeable and caring, and I am the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy a home. You gotta fill your head with the good stuff, or it gets filled with the crazies, right? So, okay. So you're gonna welcome the buyer. And I usually explain, I want to explain to you how agents work. We have to have signed contracts. Now that's required. And I don't get paid until the transaction closes. Generally, and it really hasn't changed with the new rules, the seller pays my commission. And I haven't seen that be an issue since the rules have changed. So we're not really asking the buyer to pay money out of pocket. But okay. So here's kind of their little scenario. Thanks for letting me help you. My goal is to give you a 10+ customer experience. To do that, I need to get a clear idea of what you are looking for in a new home. So with your permission, I'd like to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes exploring what the right home for you would be like. We'll call this your 10+ home. With your permission, I want to write some notes. Sounds like a robot to me, but I'm going to write some notes while we talk. So I remember everything that's important to you. And then he says, it may seem like a lot, but I'd rather ask you 500 questions now and show you the right 5 homes than ask you 5 questions and waste your time showing you the wrong 500 homes. Does that work for you? So it kind of breaks it down for them. But how does it also set expectations for the buyer? It shows them that you're the expert and you're rolling this, show. You're running this ship. And why that's important to spend time with you, just going over it. So, all right. A big part of your consultation is going to be listening and kind of filling out your own needs analysis paperwork where you're going to listen and listen and listen. And again, probe a little bit deeper sometimes. Why is that important to you that you have a half-acre yard? Is it because you have horses and you need to have, why is that important? Because you're going to get answers that you didn't ever expect. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I never would have guessed that unless you would have told me, so getting to the root of their needs. Okay. Love letters. Love letters are fun. You guys have probably heard a little bit about this. So a lot of times I've had a couple of great scenarios where my buyers have won listings because of love letters, and that's like, hey, we love your house, da 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 da, because XYZ. I had one not too long ago, it was probably only 2 or 3 years ago, where the seller was multiple offers. They had over 20 offers on their house. And I called the listing agent and said, what is the seller looking for? And he said, she would love to have a letter from the buyer explaining who they are. And I was like, okay, we have to be super careful. We can't have fair housing stuff in there. We can't say you're single or you're married or, your kids or whatever. You can't go into details like that. But my client wrote an amazing letter and talked about this house had chicken coop in the backyard and chickens, and talked about how when he was a little boy, he remember he had chickens, and like that just brought him back to his childhood, and like just lots of little things like that specific to the house. And they had done a major remodel, and he just, loved what they had done. And anyway, got that. We actually got it. There were much higher offers, but my client got that. So you never know. I actually had another one. Clients were moving here from Massachusetts, and we went into the basement of this house. It was like a shrine to the Boston Red Sox. And we were like, he's like, oh, this is cool. We wrote a letter. All we had to do is say he was moving from Massachusetts and he felt like he was at home. They were at home in the basement. And we won over higher offers. There were higher offers, and moving from Massachusetts won it from him. But you got to be super careful. I will tell my sellers, if we get love letters on multiple offers, I won't share them with my sellers. I'm like, I'll share them with you after closing if you want to see them. But so often buyers will put in things that are fair housing issues, and I just won't show it to you. If they have a picture of their family, I had one agent send me a video. I was like, I'm not opening that. I don't want to see who the people are. I have multiple offers on this house, and I do not want to know who they are. Just give me the offer. I don't need to see how cute their kids are. I don't need any of that. Like, it's not going to work. So just be super, super careful, because it can be a huge issue. But there's a place for some of it. I actually had another one right here in Provo, where a client wrote a love letter, and she gave me, I was like, it was so long. I said, no, you need to give me permission to edit that. So I took all the fair housing stuff out. I took a bunch of stuff out, a lot, and whittled it down to the bare essentials. Turned out, this was weird. The clients were moving here from Idaho. The people selling the house here knew her family up in Idaho, knew the family, her husband's family, actually, because they recognized the last name. And they were like, we know the da-da-da-da-das up in Idaho. Are you part of their family? They got the house because of that. They knew this family, this extended family. So you just never know, but you just do have to be really, really careful. Okay. All righty. Getting the signed contract, the biggest thing. So what is the purpose of our buyer consultation? Is to get this contract signed. You've got to figure out why they want to sign with you, and it protects you from spending so much time. People, like I said, I've made the mistake before with friends and other people where you waste your time and you do things that you wouldn't have done if you didn't think they were going to buy a house with you. I love my job. I love real estate. I love what I do. But that doesn't mean I want to get up and show you a house Saturday morning when I could be in bed. Like just because you're my friend. If you're my friend, I expect you to be my client as well. Like, let's define that and figure out what that is. So, okay. Questions about that? Kind of really whipping through, but it is a legal document that they sign. And we've made a lot of changes to it. I actually sit on the forms committee for UAR, made a lot of changes to it with the settlement rules. And it just helps you understand that we've made it change now. So because of the rules, they could potentially have like a showing agreement with you for a weekend, or you know what I mean? And then they go to you and say, I want to see this. Well, it makes it really clear if they've signed something with someone else, they need to tell you. So the other thing about that is you do need to be careful to ask. Like, if they've been looking at houses for 3 months, you need to ask them, have you signed anything with any other realtors? And a lot of times people don't even know what they've signed. They may have signed, just don't understand what they've signed. So the other part of that is, have you made any offers? Because if they've made any offers, they have to have signed something. And I always make them go back and look at what they signed, because I've had people swear up and down, no, we never signed a buyer broker agreement. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't sign something like that. And then when they go back and look at their email, and see the DocuSign. Oh, we signed a buyer broker agreement for a year with this agent. Okay, good to know. Had no idea they had signed it. So there's not, you just have to ask. And as long as you ask the right questions, you're kind of covered. Like then it's on them. Because if that agent were to come back to them, they would be suing the buyer, for their commission. But you asked the questions, you did your due diligence, sometimes you can even ask, hey, can I look over the paperwork that you signed with someone else? That's not bad. Potentially, they could be on the hook for both commissions. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they could, as many as they sign. So as long as they haven't expired or, things like that. But potentially they could be, yeah. And there unfortunately used to be an agent when I was a new agent. There was an agent in this valley who would take as a habit, get buyers to sign a buyer broker agreement, not do a dang thing for them, not ever return their calls ever again, and then sue them when they bought. He'd look on the county records when they bought a house. He'd sue them and he'd win because he had a contract. He would go to small claims court often. It was back when houses were a lot less money, but that just makes realtors look bad, like that doesn't help anybody. But have you guys gotten your access to the KW app yet? So this is really cool. People love it because offer them your personalized version of the KW app. And then explaining to them, okay, so now we've had this meeting. I understand a little bit more what you want. I'm going to set you up with listing alerts from the MLS. When you see those, if you have questions, if you want more information on any of those, you can call, text, email, whatever. Let me know if you have questions. And then how's next Saturday for us to go out and look at houses or whatever, set up something to go next, set up time to go out. Or if they're not to that point yet, okay, so we need to do XYZ before we can do it. Okay, so I'll call you in 3 weeks or whatever, set something up so that you're in motion. And then, yeah, giving them the lender recommendations and contact info, that's huge. So I actually am meeting with a client later this week that similar situation, like they only have probably a 3% mortgage on their house right now. And but I think they're making more money and they're ready to move closer to work and they're tired of the commute. So it might be time for them to see if they qualify and if they can move on to the next thing. So it's just hard. Did I answer your question? I don't know if I really did at the beginning. Sorta. Okay. All right. Okay. Questions? We kind of recapped. Oh, one thing I don't know if you know the KW app, that's really cool. It has a drive time feature. So if people are very concerned about the time it takes to drive to work, that's a pretty cool feature to be able to tell people about that I don't think many other apps have. So yeah, and make sure you follow up. Yeah. So you can share it with your people and then they get the customized one with your information on it. So they know to reach out to you. Okay. Oh yeah, and so if you say you're going to call them in 3 weeks, definitely call them in 3 weeks. Don't wait till 4 weeks or whatever. Make sure you set a time for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to call them. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, they're not going to want to work with you. They want to make sure that they're working with someone they can trust. So, okay. So we kind of recapped what it means to be an A qualified buyer. We covered what you need to do in your follow-up so that you land those appointments. We talked about how you can pull together your presentation in command and prepare for that appointment. I suggest you do that well before you have an actual appointment because you may spend more time on it than you think. And then it'll help you understand the process more as you go through that. And then the goal is to get that signed buyer agreement that protects you. What do you guys think is the action step after today? What is your next step on this process, this timeline, this goal? Yeah, yes, definitely have the agreement and know what it says and like get your packet together, get your buyer presentation together. That's huge. Spend some time on that. And then don't hesitate to reach out if you guys have questions. So that's pretty much what we got for today. Any questions or follow-ups or things we want to talk about before we head out of here? That's it. That's what we got. So thanks for coming, you guys. And let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything I can do to help you. I'm happy to. Sorry, it was a little fast, but I think we got through.